3 things about sneaky. 1, you hide in the shadows and in the trees all the time. 2, you move very, very fast behind them so they don't hear you coming. And 3, when there actually is frost on the ground, your sneakiness is not going to happen.
Okay, I'm gonna follow your rules. So I have to hide in the shadows. Okay. So I'm roguing. What was rule number 2?
Let's see. Be ready to move fast behind your opponent.
Okay, and then like there's no ice, so I'm good. I'm good.
You're good. You're good.
I passed roguing 101.
Yep, that works.
Yes, I'm ready, coach. Put me in.
Yep, and just always wait for your opportunity.
Okay, so sneaky in the shadows, but patient.
Very, very patient.
Got it.
And then disappear.
And welcome to the Refuge LARP Salt Lake City chapter Vodcast. I'm your host, Liz Christensen, and my guest today is Paul Trujillo, who happens to be the national president of Refuge LARP. Tell us about yourself, Paul.
Well, I'm Paul Trujillo. I've been doing Lions Refuge LARP for the past 3 or 4 years. I started LARP about 20 years ago, doing with Nero for a little while, then some smaller LARPs. Ended up not playing because I had kids, so that kind of takes care of that. But for the most part, I really enjoy playing rogues and coming around behind a lot of the NPCs that we're fighting and being sneaky. Lately, I kind of moved away a little bit and been playing a Celestial caster.
Okay, I'm relatively new to the LARP world. I've been playing for about 2.5 or 3 years, but my understanding is that Nero had a group that kind of evolved into Alliance, and maybe this refuge thing kind of mirrors that as well. Is that accurate?
That's a pretty good accurate. I mean, the thing about anything, whether it's video games, LARPing, everything evolves and changes with the times. And sometimes people want to stay with the old type of play styles, and some people want the new type of play styles. Refuge was basically based on a different play style, going into being able to change things a little bit faster. It was interesting because when 2.0 was being worked on and now 1.0 in a Refuge, I talked with Brian Gregory about it, and I said, one of the interesting things that I'm noticing is the old ways of how things were done were basically constructed off of Dungeons and Dragons, the original RPG game. So you can see a lot of like tiered structures and slower combat. And now after 30 some odd years of evolvement, you see that now things are actually sped up. So with that, LARPs have to evolve. So now we're at a faster paced game style than we used to be. So, and you got to kind of change with the times of the people who are going to be in your LARP.
What kind of specific example can you give me about how Refuge is going to accommodate that faster play style?
Well, we've already set a roadmap that, unfortunately, with COVID, we can't give a complete timetable, but we want to have our rule set changing every 2 years, so that we always know that, okay, this might be here, but in 2 years, we're going to have a change to, evolve the game to be even better and refine things going forward. Right now, we're working on the smaller things. We don't want to do big changes. A lot of people who were part of the previous LARP had just started playing 2.0, and we still want to give those players times to play 1.0 before we start saying, okay, now we're going to do this, or now we're going to do that. I don't know what changes are going to be. There's a lot that we've discussed. I can't guarantee anything. I have heard there was a discussion, maybe changing magic. I do know for a fact that we are planning on working on craft skills, but that was already being worked on prior to us becoming Refuge. So, but things are definitely going to change. And I know a lot of players like, hey, this is the perfect time, but at the same time, 2.0 was kind of new, and 1.0 is kind of new. Let's give us time to actually sit and get used to it. I mean, I was part of the beta test when we were testing the original, and even I'm a little hazy on a lot of the rules, and I've been doing it for a while. So we all got to get used to the new rule set, but we are definitely want to change it, make it better.
Besides being more flexible or adaptable on kind of a regular basis, what can a player expect that Refuge is going to be like that might be unique to Refuge?
One of the big things that, I mean, from the president's point of view, like to look at the game from the player's point of view. I'm not interested in like making this, like making myself ultra powerful. I'm interested in watching the community grow and a smaller player having just the opportunity at first through fifth level as a high level player 45 through 50th level. And that's something that a lot of the directors have discussed. And when we're in the meetings, we're all nodding our head when we bring up, the new player who doesn't necessarily get that. Yeah, they're not all and powerful, but you can still write a good story and hook that person in, and they're going to remember that. That's one of the things that kept me playing. Was I was running through a bunch of layer cards, and I happened to hook into one that the person who was running the layer cards at the time, Amber Rose. I just got hooked, and like for the next 5 games, I was running down this line, had nothing to do with the plot line, which is fine, but I just enjoyed that, and I'm like, all right, this is cool, and that's the experience I want someone else coming into the game having. That way they can come in, get hooked, not feel like you have to be main part of the plot line, but be able to find certain things that you're just like, hey, I really enjoy this. And that's what we're looking for. We want everybody to be inclusive and enjoy the game. And it doesn't matter whether you're 50th level or first level or whatever level, as the whole, we can bring a game to an enjoyment level. And that's the whole point. Let's have fun.
Let's talk terms, because you said the directors, and I don't know that I know for sure who those are and what they are, and what do you as president do? Kind of give me an idea of what the structure is and the names and titles of people.
Sure. So I'm the president of Refuge. Our Refuge LARP is a C corporation. So our main goal is to make profit. Now, I have no interest, and nor does Refuge LARP interest to like make tons of money. That's not the point of this. The point of it is that it's a lot easier to structure a company when you're not doing non-for-profit, because there's a lot rules and regulations you don't have to follow. It just makes things easier that way. So when we started forming this, we figured, okay, there's going to be a president, as standard corporations always go. You have a president, a secretary of the board of directors, and a treasurer, which we have those 3 positions. And then the board of directors can be kind of structured how you want. There's no like cookie cutter way. So we decided to basically make directors, which would also be known as board members. And each director is brought in from every chapter. Now, it doesn't have to be an owner. It can be whoever the owner wants to say, okay, I want you to be a director. We have a lot of meetings, and we've actually, just for the community at large to know, we have been meeting weekly since, I'm going to say the end of September. We finally took a break around Christmas, and sometimes directors, but also as owners, I can't be there for a meeting. So then they'll sit there and say, okay, my second's going to be so and so. And that way, they've already talked. That way, there's always a presence. Every meeting that I can remember, there's always been someone from the chapter being represented. So everybody's input is matter. And everything is by a majority vote. We don't sit there and say, okay, I'm the president, this is my say. No, let's vote on this, let's agree upon it. We have discussions about it. There's not just one ruling factor. It is pretty much a democracy. My responsibility is for the overall health of the corporation, and to make sure that we don't follow in areas that could possibly get us into legal trouble or discriminatory or stuff like that. I personally, my parents started their own business, so I've been in business since I've been 5. I grew up in business. I breathe business. I own my own company right now. I do business consulting, so I know a lot of business, and that's one of the things that the directors, owners knew about, is that I had a huge business sense. And that's why, like, hey, would you mind doing this? I'm like, no, this is cool. I'm like, just I said, under the purposes, understand, I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this to have fun and to bring a organization up that is meant for the players. And they're like, well, that's great. I'm like, I'm not asking for a dime here, guys. I don't want money back. I'm going to invest in this, and you guys pay me back when we can. Right now, COVID is wiping us all out. Most chapters haven't ran a game in almost a year now, coming up to March. I know Seattle hasn't ran one since March. So it's like, let's not worry about this and that. I'll take care of a little bit of finances that come through, whatever needs to be done, and we'll worry about that later. And they're like, really? I'm like, let's just focus on getting this set up, and let's focus on our players, so our players can have fun. And that was nice, because it gave a lot of the chapters would be considered, Seattle, Portland. We kind of changed to kind of tangent off. we kind of changed the chapters to be local specific toward the closest city. So instead of saying Portland used to be known as Oregon, now it's Portland. I think Salt Lake City I think it used to be Utah,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Now it's Salt Lake City. So we kind of wanted to give a locale, which also gives players a home, a feeling, okay, I belong to this chapter and this home base. Well, what's nice is since we did that, and a lot of the ease off the chapters, a lot of chapters have been doing galley nights or game nights on Discord. So that's like a big thing, and it's given the directors ability, like, okay, I don't have to worry about the national thing. I know it's going to work out. I know we meet, but at the same time, I can still provide my players something to do on Discord and keep them engaged. And that's really important right now, is to allow people to be engaged, because like anything else, if you're not playing, you kind of forget about it. So, but yeah.
That almost seems like a really good reason why maybe the rules adjustments need to kind of wait, because we can't really test them out in person. It's all theoretical on some level.
And it really is. And you can theory craft all you want until you're out there actually swinging a boffer. You don't really know how it's going to come across. There was many things in the play test that sounded really cool on paper, and then when you went to execute it in real combat with the boffer, it's like, that's not going to work. And that's how things change and evolve.
Where did the name Refuge come from? Why that name?
Honestly, we all kind of sat around, we were throwing a bunch of names together, and Refuge just kind of stuck. Refuge in itself, the name basically means a place of sanctuary. And that's kind of how we looked at it. The Refuge is going to be a place of sanctuary for people to come and feel accepted. That's pretty much what it came from.
Give me a quick introduction if someone was saying, what is LARP?
So LARP, first my question is, do you know what cosplay is? Because most people know what cosplay is nowadays, and that's when you see people dress up as characters or whatever it is they want to dress up as. LARP is basically taking cosplay and becoming interactive. So now you get to dress up as a warrior or a healer or whatever it is within the medieval fantasy setting, and you get to interact, and what I would be considered at some point I call interactive entertainment, because you go in and you're not just watching the story, you're part of the story. You're not just dressing up as somebody, you're dressing up as a character or race or species that you choose to be. And then you get to just play and find out how your character will interact with the world. And some people who have never been into LARP, they go in saying, well, I don't really know what my character is going to be like. And my suggestion always is play your character and see what the personality might come out in itself. Are you going to be, or could you be the slow or the quiet brooding type in the corner? Or could also you be flamboyant on the battlefield and screaming this and that and just being seen? Sometimes let the character evolve from it. Don't go into it and let your personality override, and give yourself a chance to do something you wouldn't normally do. I mean, in real life, if you're a quiet person, why not be like flamboyant and boisterous in a LARP? And it gives people to sit there, and in my opinion, it gives people a chance to find other aspects of their personality that they may not have known existed.
What is your favorite thing about playing personally?
Honestly, it's always been about community. Coming into a chapter and becoming part of a community and making friends, that's my favorite thing. Storylines are cool, combat is cool, but if I can come in and meet a bunch of friends and it's pretty much we're all hanging out for the weekend and just having fun, that's what gets me. If the community isn't there, the rules can be the greatest, the story can be cool, but if the community just isn't there to draw me in, that's not going to be for me. I want a good, strong community and a place where I feel safe and enjoy it.
So some of the things that you've talked about, I feel like are really out of the wheelhouse of what your title and job description is. You love the culture and the community, and that's like such a where the rubber meets the road kind of value. You love playing, but obviously as president, you're dealing with all this logistical stuff.
Right.
You're not creating these stories.
Nope.
How have you institutionalized a way for the values that you have for the game to be met when you're spinning on all the administrative stuff?
And that's actually a good question. So when I deal with administrative stuff, I look at how is this going to affect my player? How is this going to hurt them or harm them? Or how's it going to make it better before I try and make that choice? Sometimes, and this is in any top tier when you have to make a decision, you can't please everybody. So you kind of got to make the decision that's going to hit the most and understand that not everybody's going to be happy. And that's frustrating in itself. But if you're looking at your player base and say, hey, let's do this, a makeup change. Well, how is it going to impact? Well, some people are going to like it. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. But for the most part, players are going to appreciate it. And we take the time to get feedback and try and find out what the community is going to think about it. So as the rubber meets the road, yes. But when I'm trying to make an administrative decision and we talk to the directors, we're trying to make sure that we're making the right choice for our players first. Then we figure out the logistics of how to make it work. when it's usually in most business structures, it's the top guy makes all the decisions and lets everybody down at the end deal with it. On the other end, we structured it, and it was one of the things I told guys, I want to make sure that we understand this is, for lack of better terms, for the players, by the players. And I'm a player. Therefore, I want to take the stance of, okay, my players come first before I have to deal with the logistics of the business. But if it comes down to it, I have to make the choice that's best for the overall business and for the players. And that's where you got to make the decisions. And that's where you either are the really, really good guy or you're the really bad guy. Depends on your point of view and perspective and opinion. And that's okay.
I agree with you, right?
Yeah. And that's okay.
So chapters, they kind of remind me of like franchises, right? McDonald's is a corporation nationally, but like my own local McDonald's is owned by somebody. What does the Refuge brand guarantee me as my experience, regardless of where I go?
So one of the things that we were talking about when forming this is what exactly are we going to do? Are we going to do franchises? Are we going to do licensing? What do we want to work at? And I sat and said, you know what? The chapters are owned by the chapter owners. So we're going to do licensing, and basically the licensing says, hey, you're going to an official licensed Refuge game. You can be assured that these are the standard rules that you're going to see. There might be some chapter only specific rules, but for the most part, you know how the game's going to function. You can go to Salt Lake City, you can go to Kansas City, you can go to San Francisco, and you don't have to worry about, okay, so is my attack now 20? Am I 20 normal or just 20? Do I have to make a call? Oh, no. You know that, okay, I'm swinging 5 normal, whether I'm in this location over in Salt Lake City or this location in Portland or this, I'm all the same rules apply. And that's really where we wanted to make sure that things are static. We had a lot of things that are just straight across the board the same. And that's what we want to do, standardize. And we're working on to standardize a lot of things so that the players, you're not guessing from chapter to chapter. Artifacts and stuff like that we've already discussed, those are going to stay specific to chapters, so they're not going to flow to other chapters. Now and the nice thing is that with all the directors talking, we do leave it up to, hey, if Seattle and Portland want to talk about running stuff and allow things to cross chapter, you can do that. It's not just this is this, as long as there is a consensus and everybody's in agreement of how they want to flow. I know currently between Seattle and Portland and San Francisco, we all share the same what is currently called local chapter LCO items, and we say, okay, these are the items that we are going to accept across these three chapters. And it's something we're slowly working on a national level for more acceptance. But the nice thing is with the rule set, you're really not going to find something that's way off kilter that wouldn't be expected to see. Most of the things, you're going to find your magic items, they're going to be the same throughout. And it's just how people empowered the magic items is what's going to be the difference. But it's nice having the uniform rule set across the whole thing.
Are there any other elements besides like a mechanical element that are going to be consistent nationally?
The mechanical element is the biggest thing right now. We want to make sure that the rules are hammered out. We haven't we're now slowly discussing about basically, if your monster cards, they're going to have like a baseline idea what they should be. So, you go and you fight a gnoll in Seattle, the baseline should be the same thing in Portland. And that's something we're slowly working out.
When you say baseline, are you referring to like the lore of that monster or the stats or both?
The stats for sure, maybe even the lore, but we haven't even gotten to the part of the lore yet. But definitely we want to have a nice baseline of the stats. It's trying to make everything consistent.
Okay. That made me think of something that I have now dropped off of the top of my head.
That's okay. I can go really quick. Another thing that we did agree upon, and I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but the cosmology of Refuge was produced by all the plot heads of each chapter. So, I mean, and I'm the Seattle, head of plot for Seattle. So every single plot, head of plot came in and we all discussed how we wanted to form the cosmology, which is why when you kind of read it, it's very open. And we did that by design. So any plot team can sit there and say, well, yeah, I'm going to take this little bit and I'm going to work it here into my campaign. So it works for me, instead of saying, these are the concrete cosmology. And we said, no, we wanted to keep it as open for everybody to run their things, which is why we also changed the structure of saying, okay, we're not part of one big world anymore. Each of us does our own individual realm, which gives the freedom for the plot team to say, okay, well, my realm is going to be over here and it's going to look like this. Well, my realm is going to be over here, it's going to look like this. Another thing we also broke away from was the standardization of having your typical medieval hierarchy with kings and queens. Now, whatever chapter you're going to, it could be different. You could run into democracies, you can run into feudal systems, you can run into still the monarchy systems. We're opening it up to allow each chapter to express itself, and the heads of plot and the plot teams and how they think they want to run their world.
Is Refuge planning on having national events or regional?
Yes. Oh, yes. We just haven't gotten there yet, but yes, that is definitely on the table. There's been talk about doing cross-chapter events even, but with the logistics of that, it's hard to discuss traveling, especially when we're all under lockdown and no one can go anywhere. We all have all these ideas of just like, yeah, when we can run events.
When the time comes.
When the time comes.
What are your tips for a brand new player entering what is arguably kind of an overwhelming introduction to a hobby, during a time where they cannot participate in the game as it is intended to be, and our game itself is going through a period of transition? What's the best entry point for somebody right now?
First of all, I would always say check to see where your local chapter is, then talk to your new player representative, because and then at that point start looking at the rule book, and then see where you can get involved. I know Salt Lake City's Discord is constantly going because it's very busy. So, and I'm saying, so find out what your chapter is doing right now with it. Portland is having tavern nights every so often, and I'm not really sure what the rest of them are doing. Some of them are kind of unfortunately, Seattle, we kind of hit a really rough snag. Our final game was our finale, so we got stuck with, okay, we're done, we can't really start anything new because we need to meet up to start stuff new. So we've been kind of in a holding pattern, unfortunately, with Seattle. But while the other chapters have been able to work on things, we've just like keep coming up with how we're going to run the next season. But that's what I would suggest. Find out where your chapter is. Look up Refuge LARP, whatever the closest city is. See what comes up. Find out who's new player representative. I believe most chapters have things on Facebook. Then you can you can always go to refugelarp.org, and in each individual chapter there, you can get the link and then find them there, and then get involved. Just start talking. The one thing I will say about LARPers, pretty much in my experience across the nation, is we're not going to turn anybody away. We're not going to say, oh no, you don't belong. It's more like, hey, you're new, let's talk, or just come talk to me and let's talk about what's cool. And when it comes to LARP. And that's, and that where it goes back for me to building a community, because the community will get you involved, and it just, yeah, that's what I would suggest.
What are your goals on a business level and then on a personal like player level for 2021?
2021, just get through 2021 on a business level, to be honest with you.
Survive.
Just survive so we can run the first game. That's really the goal right now, is to be able to get through it and then get to the first thing. As on the player level is wait till I can play a game again. It's hard. It's hard because I would like to. I mean, in March it will be a year since I have been to an event. And I've got 2 chapters here. There's Portland and Seattle, and they're both pretty much within driving distance of one of them. And neither of them, other than the tavern events on Discord, and I'm more of like, I like the whole in-person aspect of things. I like that. One of the aspects of me playing a rogue is I like to see the way people stand, where they're standing, that whole roguey thing of like sizing up your enemy and see what they're going to do. I like that because that brings another element for me in playing a game that you don't really get when you're on voice chat. You can kind of get it by listening to a person's voice, but it's not the same when you can see like a disposition. Like, you look at that big warrior and he's brooding in the corner. It's like, do I want to mess with him, or is he gonna mess stuff up, or is that just his personality? That's part of the aspects that I miss as a player. So that's when I say, for business fights, survive as a player. Just wait to start playing again.
Is Refuge going to come back on a national level at the same time, or is that a chapter by chapter decision?
It has to be a chapter by chapter decision, unfortunately. Every single state has their own specific guidelines. And that was one of the things. If we just had a town hall meeting that just kind of came up, and the question had been posed, are you going to enforce vaccines? Are you going to enforce wearing masks? And my response was, I can't really enforce something on a national level if you're down in San Francisco and San Francisco says you can't do anything for the next 3 months, and then Kansas City chapter is they're wide open. You can't really sit there and put everybody in one box, because we are under the dictation of what the local government and state governments are going to decide.
I'm curious, in these town halls, if there are things that have come up where you're like, okay, here are the questions I always get asked. Let me just bam, bam, bam. Here's the frequently asked questions. Let's just get all this out of the way. Are there things that you're like, okay, Salt Lake City, here's what you need to know, and then we can move on?
The only question that we kind of get asked over and over again is, why aren't you changing the rules now? And it's like, and our response has been the same, because there's a lot of chapters that never even played the rules very long, and we can't really test something if we're not playing. That's the one question that I get the outside look. I'm going to get from the outside perspective of, hey, we got time, let's change it all now, or let's try and make these decisions. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. Coming from a business aspect of when you're trying to do things, you'd never go live until you run at least some sort of beta to make sure it works.
I'm curious, if someone shows up on the website, refugelarp.org, and they go to the chapter list and they realize they are far away from every chapter, and they begin to think like, maybe I can make my own chapter and license, what would you have them do?
The first thing I need to do is like contact the national organization. We have and it's a very long list, specific guidelines that new chapters have to follow before we will actually consider them to become part of the organization. I would go over the list, but like I said, it's pretty long. I mean, you have to have a business established. You have to have, one of our stringent requirements, you have to have at least a site available to yourself, and you also need to have at least 2 years with a plot already pre-written. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to start something up. It's okay. Understand that you really have to put a lot of thought into this, and if you put a lot of thought of it into it, then fine, we're good to go. That's actually. I'll use San Francisco. San Francisco isn't the Alliance San Francisco. It actually is San Francisco Refuge. It's a new organization for itself. They presented us with like everything down the board before we even asked, and we're all like, that's exactly what we're looking for. What your business model is, do you have a plot team established? Do you have 2 years of content? I mean, it was right there, and that's what we're looking for. Make sure that you're understanding that you are going to be running a business. and you are going to have to supply a service to players, we want to make sure that before you even get that far, that you understand that 2 years of service needs to be written, and by the end of 2 years, you're going to well versed of hitting all the speed bumps in the road and any questions that the national org can help person with. But for anybody who wants to be prepared, because it's work. It's a lot of work.
Okay, what about a player who is thinking, I have some time on my hands, at least right now, or I would really like to get involved with the game on a national level? What's their first step?
So the national organization in itself is built from the chapters themselves. So every committee, the people on these committees are from the chapters. So the first step really is to get involved with your local chapter. That really is the first step before going to the org, because we want to make sure that you're part of a community already before you want to jump into a larger community, because it's like going from a small pond to a bigger pond. This is the bigger pond, and be part of the nice small pond and be acclimated before getting thrown into, oh hey, you got a meeting on. In fact, I was just going over the meeting schedule. I think there are at least 5 meetings scheduled across 6 different committees over the next 2 weeks. So it's a lot more when you get to that level.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you're just chomping at the bit to talk about today?
No, you've actually pretty much hit everything I would want to discuss. You did a really good job.
Oh, well, thanks. Before we go, though, will you share with me one of the most nostalgic LARP moments, a story for you that you've been kicking around since you can't play right now? What's one of the things you're most missing?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those moments I just can't share.
It's because you're a rogue, right?
Because I'm a rogue. Yep. It's just one of those moments. That's kind of one of the reasons why I started moving toward a celestial caster, because all my good moments are just moments I can't share as a rogue.
You tell me, then you'd have to kill me.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think it's me who would have to kill you. It's my buddy who would have to kill you, because he was involved, and he's a really good fighter, and yeah, that he would have to. And that's breaking like an unsaid rule there. So.
All right. The interviewer in me wants to say, but where were you? And tell me about your buddy then.
Let's just say there was a lot of, I saw something, they saw something, I followed, we nodded, and it was cool. How about that? Because that's literally how, and there was like 3 words spoken. And then after that, we were pretty much friends from that point on.
Rogue bonding subbed up in 3 steps. We looked at each other, we nodded, we don't talk about it.
Yep, that's exactly how it works.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much for sitting down to talk with me about the national level of Refuge and this transition and everything. I really appreciate it.
Sure. And you have a wonderful night. It's been enjoy talking with you.
Hey, players that are watching, be sure to like and subscribe and share this so that not only you can enjoy the LARP, but other people can too, and we can get this good information out there. And have a great day.